friendly, more games that have to do with maybe with history or with science or something to do with how it's made, a guessing game, how things are actually put together in reality, how to, something that is going to bring a young adult into full adulthood, or a child, a young person growing up into to be able to accept reality for what reality is, and not for what is simulated on a game. Of course, we find a lot of games that are obviously not like that at all. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to hear from you. 206-736-9688 is our phone. Visit us online if you'd like to do that at our forum. That's HOUR forum.net. And I'm Robert Christian. Steve Moen is in there. He's our director. And Brandon is our guest from Buffalo. Brandon, I think that the actual technology and the actual industry for video games has grown really from an industry that was based on just a few dollars and somebody's wild imagination to a multi-billion-dollar industry today. What would you say to some of these game developers and these producers of video games specifically that are violent? What would you say to them?
I'm sorry, you're going to have to repeat the question.
What would you say to these producers, these makers of these video games that are violent? What would you, as a parent, say to them?
As a parent, I'd have to sit down and say, listen, there is a very fine line between the teen-rated games and the mature-rated games. That is a huge thing that needs to be changed. 13 to 17 is basically, from my understanding, what teen-rated means. And I'm sorry, if you're 13 years old, you're a far cry from understanding stuff that a 17-year-old is going to, understand. That is a huge problem of mine. That needs to be changed. I would look them straight in the eye and tell them, you need to change that. The mature ratings, okay, that's fine. I can understand that. That's perfect. I can understand the kid games, E for everyone or E10 plus. But the teen section of this needs to be fixed because it's putting parents in a position to look at games and say, well, okay, it says teen, my kid's a teenager, but the ESRB made it teen because it was just on the edge of being mature, but not quite mature.
Well, I know that we're going to be covering next week the subject of video game ratings, and so ladies and gentlemen at home and wherever that you are around the world, we invite you to watch us next week because we're going to be talking about that exact thing, the video game ratings and the crossover between video games and movies that you would go see at a movie theater, of why that the ratings are what they are, who actually did it, what's actually behind it. Now, Brendan, where do you see video games, the technology specifically, going in the next 10 years?
In the next, how long?
10 years.
10 years. That's a tough question. I'll be honest with you. That's a very tough question. We've gone from, like I said, black and white, two-dimensional games to high-definition virtual worlds within, 20, 30 years or so. They make, these developers continue to make huge strides. I would say, maybe holographic type of games, but that had actually hit in the 90s, the very early 90s, maybe even the late 80s. I'm not 100% on that, but it was one particular system that was capable of doing it, and it was kind of cool. It was in an arcade. never made it to home systems, and it was pretty specific to that system that they had in the arcades. But if I were to really take a guess, based on the fact that holographic games never really took off, and high definition really was the way to go, to take a wild guess, I'd say higher definition. I think that developers are probably going to look at using computers to get every last little detail out of a person's face, out of their hands, out of their arms, out of their entire body, to really make a full-figured, perfectly engineered duplicate of a human being on your television.
Now, I remember it's been a couple of nights ago. We were actually Steve, our director, and I. We were watching a show about a. Well, I'm not. I can't. I'm not going to say what the name of the show was or the actor, but it was a show that was really popular back in the '70s, and he was on there. This actor, he was talking about it and talking about some of the technology that they used back then. And some stuff that just was a fly-by-night idea, and then they tested it. They actually put it on camera in front of a television set, in front of millions of viewers, and did not think that idea would even fly, but it did. And people still ask questions about these little devices and things that they used in this outer space concept. But it was, the concept from, and it's amazing what you see on television. With some of these spacey type programs and movies and shows and things, it might look really awesome and really cool. But if you look way back at the infancy of that type of structured idea, that one day this pen can do such and such, or one day this pen, hey, guess what? Well, they have them now. For an example, this writing pen that have lasers in them, little laser lights you can play with the animals with, or they have spy cameras built in them, or little recording devices, and I mean it's totally insane what people have come up with. But again, looking back at the '70s, back then that was just a dream. Like, wouldn't it be really nice to have such and such product in this in this pen, or a salt and pepper shaker that does it can kind of morph over and do something else. But looking at the technology back then, it was an idea, but today a lot of that is reality. What do you think about it?
Well, it's when you have somebody who's a visionary that sees an idea and looks at it and says, well, wouldn't it be cool if? And then somebody sits down and takes that idea and says, not if, how? And they figure out a way to do it. I mean, I think it's extraordinary. As long as the technology doesn't get to the point where it's going to hurt humans as a whole, it's not anything terrible. The kids aren't going to see this and look at it and go, well, geez, this is a little violent. As long as it's not something crazy. I mean, I've seen goofy things like a lazy guy sitting on the couch decided that while he was watching Sunday football, he was going to build this contraption that held beer and with remote control would actually throw him a beer from one side of the room to the other without him having to get up. I think that's pretty neat.
Well, I think that technology, it is still, it's in its infancy, I believe, because, we have now upcoming in February, I believe it is, the 19th, as I remember, things are going over to HD then, or to digital rather.
Digital, yep.
It's amazing at the concept and what it does.